And go. It is time for the Resilience Reset, a chance for you to just take whatever kind of day you're having and pause for a moment, have a little jolt of inspiration and thinking, and then you can go back to it, hopefully having an even better day than you already have had. Now, today's story or concept is all about if you're unhappy at work. And, I'm hearing a lot about the Great Resignation. People quitting their jobs. I don't know where these people are going to. Like, where are they? Where are they going when they quit their job? Because I have a lot of friends who are trying to get jobs right now, and it's not like it's just booming out there. But anyway, before I go on, I want to let you know I did get a new microphone because we had some audio difficulties last week, and I want to be sure that we're good and everybody can hear me. So if somebody can just throw that in the chat box and let me know one way or the other, that would be great. Otherwise, I'm going to keep on going and hope that if we're not, somebody will let me know. Okay. So if you're unhappy at work, I think the instinct is I need to get rid of this so that I can be happier. And that can be in all different things in life, but specifically we're going to talk about if at work you're not happy. And there are many reasons you could be unhappy. Oh, thank you very much. Appreciate it. I got a good to go. A good to go. And the trouble is, and by the way, I am a classic. Like my old patterns are a classic. I don't like it over here. I'm going to go over there. So I call it my gotta go technique. So not effective if you want staying power and a long-term strategy, right? And so I can definitely speak from experience in this case because I had quit many, many, many jobs in my early career. And of course, now I've been in business for 15 years. And at the end of this month, it will actually be, I will start my 16th. It'll be my anniversary. So yay, yay. Although, I think sometimes, and this is good that I read that book last week about the E-Myth Revisited. Remember the one we talked about, the entrepreneurial myth, and how people have entrepreneurial seizures where they think, you know what, I don't like working for somebody else. I'm going to go do what I do, but I'm going to do it for myself. And then they get into business and go, oh my God, I'm going to do all the other stuff behind the scenes, the stuff that people don't see in being in business for yourself. So if you have a job, but it's a toxic work environment, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what if you don't like your boss, and what if you just don't like the actual work. That could be it as well. But let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater, as they say there with the whole, Great Resignation, everybody leaving their jobs and I get it, because COVID has opened up our eyes to the fact that maybe the life I'm living is not the life I want to live. But, as my brother always used to joke with me and say, Allison, the grass is greener on the other side because the neighbor's septic tank is leaking. It's well fertilized. He's so funny. Anyway, it's not always the grass always greener because it's a good thing, right? It could be something bad. You just don't see what's happening behind the scenes. Okay, so, and the story I want to tell before I get into this is a friend of mine who was really unhappy at work because of a toxic boss, okay? And she decided to quit, and she went to the competitor. And then you know what happened? 30 days later, the same boss also quit and came to the same competitor. So, the problem with the quitting strategy if you're unhappy is that it suggests that the circumstances that are external to us actually dictate how we feel. When in actual fact, if you know my work, what I'm trying to get people to understand is that you are in response of how you feel. And all of the shit show that can be going on around you doesn't necessarily have to influence how your emotional state. We can change our perspective of what's happening. We can have emotional and mental discipline around how we interpret those challenges that are going on around us. We can step out of the drama. We can allow the toxicity to be around us without choosing to participate. And so if that level of empowerment doesn't excite you, then this probably is not going to be the video for you. But I do know, and I've worked with people to help them figure out how to navigate difficult times like this, where the circumstances suck and they can show up okay and be happier as their whole life. So I've got a whole bunch of things written down for you. I'm super excited to share this with you. But like the big thing to recognize is people are the same wherever you go. And the most important person who's the same wherever you go is you. And so if you have certain patterns that are attracting or participating in the toxicity or the drama, I'm not saying you do, I'm just saying possible, there's a good chance that's going to follow you. And so the quitting is not the strategy that we want. And actually it can be a lot more expensive, right? Or it can be a lot less secure to go somewhere that you love. Now, look, I'm all about following your love and your joy. And I mean, I'm so blessed to get to do what I do for a living because I absolutely love it. And it makes my heart sing. But, like there are a lot of other things beyond your work in your life, the whole take back your weekends, just saying, that can help contribute to your joy. Oh, and how fun. Look at this. Speaking of joy, Cheryl Lynn, who is on a mission to get people to be more joyful, is giving me a compliment. So I'm grateful for that. Thank you very much. She spreads joy everywhere she goes. That's her thing. Honestly, go check it out. Talking about joy. Okay, so your patterns are going to be the same. So what we need to do if you're unhappy at work is we need to focus on your level of happiness and how you're showing up in the world to influence what's happening around you, but also your perception of what's going on. Okay, so that's the premise for what we're doing here. But let's get into the steps. Number one, I want you to just objectively look at what you're doing throughout your day. So there's got to be some things that are working, and there's probably, if you're unhappy, some things that are not. So one way to do this is, keep a Post-it note beside you, a little piece of paper, and just write down as you go through the day who you interact with, what type of tasks you're doing, what piece of the puzzle are draining your energy. You can actually match up all of that with happy face, neutral face, sad face, angry face, whatever, and just get a sense of what it is. And maybe you track for a day, maybe you track for a week, but there will ultimately be some themes that will come out of that can really, truly help you look at your workday from an objective perspective. Okay. And the reason we got to do this is because the cloud of negativity can shadow everything in your workday. And so then I start hearing people say things like, oh, I hate my job. Oh, I hate working there. Oh, they're all idiots, and we get into it and we start using these blanket terms that just make everything bad. When I'm going to challenge you and say there's probably, look, I don't know what the percentage is. It could be 50-50. Some of it's good, some of it's bad. But is 90% of it bad? Probably not. But that 10% that is negative or bad, or is the interaction that you hate, or is the thing that is draining your energy, is so powerful. If we don't have the mental discipline to separate it from the other 90%, chances are that 90% is going to feel so negative unnecessarily because you're just having it be the negativity cloud. Okay. So that's why we want to look objectively at your workday, get a sense of what you're doing, what's working, what's not working, find the bright points. So when we look in that, I want you to go, okay, you know what? If I'm really honest, I hate doing that part, but I love doing that. Or, when I get to interact with that team member, things are really good. And when I work with that one, not so much. Right. And then once we have that information in black and white written down on a piece of paper, probably don't show it to the people who aren't, the bad ones. That's when we can start strategizing. Okay. Like what can you delegate? What can you delete? What can you defer? What can you, just have a conversation and trade off with someone? I mean, there are lots of different things we can do. Or is there a way that you can change how you do it? I remember I was working with a client and she hated these monthly report, like, I don't know what they were. They would report things, and she would go into Excel and have to grab all the numbers and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, there's a way to automate that. And she's like, oh, really? And turns out she, ended up hiring somebody not for a lot of money, just really easy, and put the whole shindig together. And now she can pull the reports in just a matter of minutes, as opposed to taking her like an hour and a half of dreaded work. Right. And sometimes it's a matter of talking to your colleagues. Hey, how are you doing that versus how are you doing that? And maybe there are other people who have skills in those areas that are draining you, that you can find more effective and efficient ways to actually do them. Okay. Possibility. All right. So the next thing we want to do is we want to track your time. Oh, I've already talked. Why did I put that down twice? The cloud. Okay. So get clear on what you do each day, just not your work. Oh, this is it. Tracking your, okay. So that's tracking your work. Now we want to look at, what are you doing around the work? Like, this is where we get compassionately curious about you and how you're showing up in the world. But the thing I really want you to look at are the engagements around what you do. Meaning, are you gossiping? Are you complaining? Are you spending a lot of time focusing on stuff out of your control? Now, here's the thing. These might seem like pointed, judgy questions, and they're not. They are self-reflective questions. And I know them to be important because when we're in an unhappy place, the tendency is to go to negative habits as part of the human experience. So it's just the way things are, right? Like, if you're not happy and you don't like this thing, unless you're really mentally and emotionally disciplined, there's a very high likelihood that you are going to end up complaining about it to anyone who will listen. And the thing is, that hurts your relationships. It hurts your own vibe. It makes the storyline even more negative, because as we tell and complain about the same story in circumstances over and over again, it tends to intensify, not necessarily lessen. I mean, that's a whole other topic around venting versus complaining. But I just think we want to really get clear on, are you contributing to a negative spiral in your unhappiness equation? Something to consider. And going further, like asking yourself with this compassionate curiosity lens, are you part of the problem? So if you take your toxic work environment and you don't like it, then look at what is leading to that. Is there any part of the equation that you are contributing to? Are you dropping the ball on things because you're unengaged? Are you enticing negativity by talking behind somebody's back or doing all these things? And I'm asking these questions. I know that it's like, I'm not blaming anybody at all. What I'm trying to do is get people to see that there's dynamics. And with every relationship, we end up with a soundtrack, right? Like how things operate. And if it's not a happy place, then what happens is the negativity tends to attract, and everybody kind of spirals together. Okay. Let's have a look. Hi, Allison. I'm late to the party today. Well, better late than never, I say. I find understanding the context can really help to channel the positive energy and output to just get things done. Yes. Oh, there's more coming, because that's one of two. And this concept around being unhappy at work and getting sucked into the drama, like, it is possible, right? Like, and it doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make anybody a bad person. And even the people who you work with who are maybe leading the charge of the toxicity, and that's why you're feeling unhappy at work, you know what? They're just in this downward spiral too. So, but here's the thing. If we don't know and we don't ask ourselves these tough questions, then the problem is we can't choose to do better. And that ultimately is the answer, right? That's our personal development journey. Okay, I don't like how I reacted then when that happened. So what can I do next that is going to help me react even better. And the only thing within our control is our own response. We can't change the suckage around us, at least not in the short term. So how can we choose to no longer be or contribute to part of the problem? Okay, another comment here. Once you understand what the task enables someone else to do, you can understand where it falls in the big picture. Yes, having that greater purpose. And I think we've talked about that before, Greg, too, right? Is the concept around understanding your why and your purpose. And funny enough, it's going to tie into one of my tips that's coming up. So in sync. So in sync. I mean, Greg has been, I think, watching probably since day one. When no one else was coming, Greg was here and contributing. And now we've got a bunch of people who are showing up, which is awesome. The quicker we can find common ground, what needs to happen, we can be curious, like you said, about finding better ways to get it done and move forward as a team. Absolutely. And, it's this clouding that makes it so hard for teams to find their way through. And then there's all this back end resentment. And, I've just talked to too many teams that are having this kind of thing. And it's unfortunate because I think if you're unhappy at work, chances are most people are, or others are as well. So now what we want to do is once we have all of that on the table, because if you think about my problem solving framework, watch how this works. The first couple that I talked about were situational awareness, getting really clear on what's happening. And so you can kind of see, okay, what is the good? What is the bad? What is it that I'm actually dealing with? And then we want to get into self-awareness. How am I responding to what's happening? But also, how am I potentially making what's happening harder to deal with? And now we go into solution activation mode with that information. If we didn't have that information in tow, solution activation could be much harder. And so I'd love you to brainstorm ideas with others. The first part is like asking whose responsibility in the organization is it to lead the culture? And if you don't know the answer to that, that might be part of the problem with the culture. But I'm going to ask you if you're really unhappy before you quit, because the concern with quitting for the leader is like, that's a huge problem. I've seen stats where it's 2 to 3 times somebody's salary in order to replace them. And that's why this whole Great Resignation issue is such a huge, complex problem that is overwhelming the C-suite executives right now across North America. Because if people just quit, and sometimes with no notice or sometimes without having the chance for anybody to make something right, like I think as employees or as team members, we make the assumption that people should just get it. The leadership should just know how to fix it. And I got to tell you that the leadership doesn't necessarily have the answer. And in many cases is oblivious to how bad it is, or the ones who really care. And I'm not saying all leaders care, but the ones who really do, I know because I've had a lot of conversations with them. I got to tell you, they're like, Allison, I don't know how to fix it for them. I don't know what to do. And that's why, they might bring me in to start inspiring a problem-solving culture and get people out of the destructive stress spiral. Because if you're less stressed, then ultimately how you show up for your team members is going to improve as well. Got another comment here. Fast and furious on the typing. This is good. Okay. Once you get pulled into the weeds, it's easy to believe that you and your activities, or lack thereof, rent a lot more space in other people's minds than they actually do. Oh my gosh, you're right. Like, what was that? Isn't there like some quote where somebody said, was it Morgan Freeman? Might be, where he said, it wasn't until I was older I realized how little people were actually thinking about me. Right? I forget who said that. I've got a thing here. Hi, Maya. The problem is not the work. It's leadership at work. Great point. Okay, let's talk about. From what I get from most of the people, that is why HR shall take a very creative step to keep good employees. HR shall have advanced team to listen and find solutions. Yes. So here's the thing. I think it's not that leaders don't care although there are some that don't. The problem is they don't know what to do about it. And they'll try something. So, oh, well, we're going to have a team building day. Well, that's great and all, but it's not necessarily going to have a long-term impact. And in actual fact, if you got a whole bunch of people who are really in a toxic environment and they don't love working together, and then you put them out of that environment and they have a blast because they've done this amazing team development day and whatever, the truth is they're going to come back to work and they're going to slip into the same old patterns because, as I said earlier about the soundtrack, we all have our soundtrack, and they may even end up with a vulnerability hangover, and it might be harder to complain about the person who dropped the ball but it's because they have that relationship started or that external experience that had some fun. It's just not going to change the actual culture. Let me see this. Okay. Raymond is saying, but they act as if they know what to do. I have found that they don't have the slightest idea. They don't. And here's the other thing with that. And this is no excuse, because leadership needs to be about learning this stuff. But the vast majority of leaders and professionals who work for them and their teams are, those are the same things. I assume the people who work for the leaders are the professionals. You know what I mean? Okay. But here's the thing. Most people are not doing what I'm doing, which is consuming, I can't even tell you how many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of content to learn about psychology, to learn about human behavior, to learn about habit stacking, to learn about how we show up, right? And that's why it's easy for me to look at a situation and go, okay, well, this is the obvious answer why your culture is so messed up, right? But if you're in the weeds, if you're caught in the destructive stress vortex, if you are so busy that you don't have a second to yourself, then the truth of the matter is you don't have the bandwidth, you don't have the capacity left over to try to figure out, how do I consistently make this culture better? That's one of the biggest problems. So not only do they not know what to do, many leaders do not have the capacity in order to fix it. And then there are some leaders who have the experience or the belief, right or wrong, that my team are adults, they should be able to figure it out for themselves, right? So we're dealing with many, many, many dynamics here. Another post. People don't change jobs solely for money. 100%. Actually, I think they're saying that that's like the least important incentive. Like once there's a certain level of financial security met, that tends to be the least thing that we're doing. They rarely resign on a whim or on a fit of anger. Some do, but yeah, most people, it's death by 1,000 paper cuts, I'm guessing. I'm just reading along and answering. It's like we're having a conversation. All right. They joined the company because they believed it was the right for them and wanted it to be right. Agree with you there. Something at some point went wrong. And now, so here's where I'm going to have to keep reading because it doesn't allow me to do the longer ones. Something at some point made it wrong. Yes, I agree. And if you really take the time to dig into their real reasons for leaving, and you should, you find that it's not the company they blame. It's not the location or the team or the database or the air conditioning. It's the leadership. You are 100%, because it starts at the top and it comes down. And this is where we're having this conversation around, I don't think the executive team really knows how to solve the problem, and they don't have the capacity necessarily to even be able to be looking at situations. And that's why you'll see a lot of people say, a lot of big companies making the commitment, which is like, good job, to give employees an extra day off. But the truth is, a day off will not change a burnout path. It will not change the patterns in a culture. It will not fix a destructive culture. You can give people a month off. I mean, who's going to do the business? But you could shut things down for a week or a month or a day. It's not going to change what's happening on the ground. Yeah. All right. Maya's saying, during my fundraising experiences, I heard a lot of comments like I cannot breathe inside of work. I can totally just feel exactly what you mean by that. They say that they are not appreciated and that no one cares, and that affects the way they contribute. 100%. Raymond saying, I agree. This is exactly right. But here's the thing. Sometimes as like the conversation with a leader of, look, I'm seriously contemplating leaving this organization because I am very unhappy and the culture is not happy. It's not effective. I've done what I can do. Hopefully you have. I'm at a loss for what I can do. Here are some ideas I have. Are you open to trying to fix this problem, or do you foresee it ever changing? I mean, it's an uncomfortable conversation, but I think it's a better conversation than if you just quit, right? Whether you've been contemplating it for a long time or not. I lead by example in my team. That is why I earn respect, and my team is amazing and untouchable. Earning a respect does not come from titles, but from going in to understand. Yes. And you know what? And I also want to recognize there are a lot of amazing leaders, who have stepped up, and there are many leaders who have failed in this area and who are desperately trying to fix how they're showing up. So kudos to them, zero judgment. And there are some that are oblivious, and sometimes they're oblivious because they've never had a good example of leadership. Sometimes they're oblivious because they're, trying to manage their own ego, or, just trying to save face and pretend like they're the great thing because they're of that old school approach. And then sometimes they just don't care. But, you can care. Okay, let's get back into these ideas. So first start with the leader, whoever's responsible for culture, and have the conversation. Bring it to their attention, be professional, but be direct. Like, that whole sandwiching thing maybe isn't the best thing to do here. It's really great to work here. I'm feeling like I'm really not that happy, and I really don't want to leave. Is there anything we can do to make this better? Oh, thanks again. Like, it kind of gets lost in the middle. And I find a lot of people, when they're talking about really serious issues, tend to use that sandwiching framework, positive, negative, positive, which is great to cushion the blow, but it doesn't necessarily truly underline the severity of the fact that you are ready to exit the company. Okay. And I think you want to have this conversation earlier rather than when you've totally checked out. So now, what do you do if the leader is not interested in fixing it and you still don't want to quit, or you think it's not the most responsible thing? Okay. Well, you could talk to your teammates. Again, I already said, if people are unhappy with you or in the work environment, then chances are, if you're unhappy, then others are as well. But if you're flying solo, this is where true empowerment comes from. How you interact and how you perceive the situation. So if you have a leader who doesn't appreciate you, appreciate yourself. Appreciate others. So recognize that if you're on a team where the leadership is not appreciating others, how do you become the appreciating champion, right? And start recognizing when other people do things good, because maybe you can start to just inspire little moments of appreciation and spark some happiness, spark some smiles in the midst of it. And you're probably thinking, well, not my responsibility. Why do I need to be the one to do this? Can't the leadership take it on? Well, this is about your livelihood. This is about how you spend probably a minimum of 8 hours of your life every day. I'm going to say that that's worth swallowing your pride and doing everything in your in your being to be able to fix it if possible. So now it's okay, can you take small steps consistently over a very long period of time in order to improve the environment in which you work? So if you can fix the vibe with your sphere of influence, then, at least your little bubble can be better. So being the bright light in an interaction, right? Being the person who spreads kindness, Gary Vaynerchuk talks about that all the time. Being kind. It doesn't cost anything. Sometimes it costs you your pride. Sometimes you got to squeeze your butt cheeks and go, okay, yeah, let's do the kindness thing here. And I'm not talking phony shit. I'm not talking the, like, oh, like the fake smiles, the ones I'm talking about. Not that. I mean, genuinely buy into the fact that it's better if I see this from a better perspective than a negative one. The other thing you can do is you can shut down negative small talk. Somebody starts gossiping, somebody starts complaining, somebody starts going on and on and on about how awful this person is or how they dropped the ball. Interrupt the conversation, just go, oh, you know what? I wonder if something's going on in their life. Hey, what are you going to do tonight? Or, hey, did you get that done? Like, just plug the rabbit hole before it starts spiraling. That is totally within your control to do. The other thing, notice when somebody's doing something right. Like, how can you, like I said, if somebody's not giving appreciation, if somebody's not doing the thank yous, if somebody's not handing out kudos, why can't you? And acknowledge people for what they want. I mean, people are desperate for being appreciated and recognized. Men die for it, recognition, right? And babies cry for it, right? Like, give it freely. You might actually be the little spark that makes somebody else feel better about their day. And you know what? If that's compounded, if that becomes, and then you do that, and then they do that, and they pay it forward, like, you could actually create over time a better work environment. It's so critically important to recognize, though, you may change your behavior. It doesn't necessarily mean that anybody else is going to. So you've got to be okay with that, but just make your own little happy bubble, right? On how you do this. Okay, we've got some point over here. Let's bring up another comment. Nothing is perfect, but your team as a leader reflect you. They mirror you. I'm only 16 and I learned, you're only 16? Oh my gosh, good for you. And I learned that early, that is why my 32 team members exceeds in the community and do a moment of truth every time on a daily basis. I'm going to keep reading. They take leadership in their life and touch people's hearts. Well, and this is what I'm talking about, where you can actually inspire just by your little bit, right? So leadership, being thoughtful, recognizing, and handing out the kudos freely, creating a great work environment, that's going to like domino out for each of those employees and team members to actually lead in their own life, as you're saying, and continue to expand, which is really, really awesome. Like, I don't think we recognize how critical it is how people are showing up at their lives. Because if you're doing all the negative stuff at work and then you come home to your family, how are you going to switch that over? Right? Like, how do you go from being negative for 8 hours to coming home and being like totally in the moment? Now, the answer is emotional discipline, mental discipline. Like, it always comes back to the same stuff, the problem solving framework, putting it on top of this issue. And most people aren't doing that, right? So here's where I would go next, is I'm going to ask you to look for the inspiration, to find the deeper reason why you're doing what you're doing. And not only why you're doing what you're doing, but what is the outcome, the long game of what you're doing? Meaning, are you critical to the supply chain operating? Are you inspiring smiles down the road, right? Like, if you are working for a toy manufacturer, can you focus on the kids who are going to get that present? If you're working in the transportation sector, can you think about the people who are going to get to eat because the grocery stores are going to have their shelves? Like, is there something you can do to tie your being in the day-to-day to a bigger philosophy, into a bigger piece of the puzzle, right? Because sometimes when you need a little shot of juju, a little positive vibe, knowing that and connecting the dots to the bigger picture can really help you figure out how do you find a little bit of more joy. DJ's got a comment here. What I have seen in some situations is not a problem with the leader at the top, but rather someone still in a place of long-term influence who consistently puts negative spin on things that others are either shaped by or feel they are cannot confront. So true. Rightly or wrongly. How do you see that adjusting some of the strategies you recommend? I understand the positive and appreciative comments still make sense in such a context. They do. Okay. So, and it's interesting you bring this up because I've had some conversations with different leaders in organizations where if we look at hierarchy, there's the big C-level executives and they're like all in for, come on, we want to have a great environment and everybody on the team and, kumbaya. And then there's the employees who are all like, yeah, I want to show up for work and I want to do really great. And then somewhere in the middle, there's middle management. And middle management gets a bad rap, but often they are the people who wear a lot of the brunt of the responsibility, and they don't necessarily always have the full decision-making power, and they don't feel heard and they don't feel listened to. And then the problem is they end up taking that out on the people around them. And so it's often, I think, to your point, there's sometimes the person in the middle. Now, I know, I have some testimonials to this on my website. I know I come in and I do the speech around leading in a resilient culture, and I do that with middle management and up. And we talk about how people, can go into the victim trap and how do you get them out of that. And I remember one particular story where after my speech, one of the middle managers came into a senior leader's office and said, I heard Allison speak, and I recognize that I am caught in the victim trap and I am complaining way too much. And I believe I may be the problem with our culture. I may be the point person who's causing this. So see, sometimes we need to, because I think those people in that situation are not aware of the negative impact they're having on the overall culture. And so if there's anything that can be done to bring that awareness to them, then that is often a first step. But I think if there is an isolated person who is like, the problem with the victim is that they can, just suck the enthusiasm out of a team. And so what we need to do as a team, if there's one point person and everybody around the team, or 2 or 3 or 4 people, are committed to improving the culture, then they need to change the soundtrack and how they interact with that point person. Okay. So that's the only way it's going to change. So either two ways. The individual who's causing the bottleneck in the culture needs to have an awakening and needs to recognize that they are the culture problem, that they are the instigator, they are the lead domino who is bringing the negativity into the space. That's one. Or the people around that person need to stop allowing that person to have as much influence in how they show up for their day-to-day. They need to take responsibility. They need to plug the rabbit hole. When the negativity comes, when they're complaining, they need to walk away from the conversation. They need to learn some shutting down techniques. So for example, one of my favorites, I might say, oh yeah, well, gosh, there's a problem we're not going to solve tonight. And then I move on. How about them Jays? Are the Jays playing right now? I don't think it's time for the baseball. But we need to have those lines and we need to instill them with people with confidence, because it only takes a matter of, maybe 4 or 5 or 6 times of shutting that person down from having them to, where are they going to spread it? If nobody's listening, then the negativity, the person doesn't have anywhere to spread it to, or they'll find somewhere else to go. Right. And so we allow it. Like if somebody is on a mission to cause negativity within our organization and we give them a voice, then we've essentially allowed them to infiltrate our lives with our negativity. And so it's up to us to put that shield up and be like, okay, no, not going to happen. For those of you who know I'm doing karate, I do have my blocks. Anyway, I digress. It's the only time I've had to use it for any reason. But like now that I'm sort of thinking about it, it is exactly that. It's like, negativity, put it up and like stop allowing it to come into your life. And then the other piece is, I think, with the mental discipline and actually dissecting. And, if you haven't watched it, watch my video. I think I did it on Wednesday, Wildcard Wednesday, about how we make everything harder when I talked about the ice cube that became the snowman. And so if somebody is creating a lot of snow, meaning our like negative storyline and barriers to performance and adding on that like packing around the little ice cubes, the tasks of the job and the obstacles that need to get solved. Sometimes it's other people who are packing our snow around those situations. Well, we need to blast through the snow and get to what is the actual issue. DJ, I hope that helped. I mean, at the end of the day, we can only control how we respond. That's it. And so we got to do the best we possibly can with that. Okay. So those are my thoughts. Oh my gosh, we've been going forever. It's a long video, but it's such an important topic. And I think I just want to highlight, first of all, if you are a leader and you're listening to this and you're feeling like, oh shit, maybe I'm dropping the ball and maybe I'm not doing what I need to do for my team, please book a call with me. I mean, this is my work, right? This is how I go in and inspire and empower these problem-solving cultures. And let's talk about that. And also, you've got my book and blogs and all of that available as well. If you're on a team, you don't have to quit, right? Like maybe there is a point where you do need to quit. And sometimes it's better just to stay and fix the problem. Maya's saying, I have people from all walks of life, race and culture, economic scales that all contribute to my vision to end poverty and make the world a better place, one lemon at a time. We turn them into lemonade and change their lives. We do not look, here, let me keep reading what she said. We do not look for anything but the satisfaction of making our world a better place. Problem solving is a major thing in our counseling. Turning a team into a family and standing together to support is amazing. The only thing I ask from my team is commitments to the vision. See, and this is your leader who has adopted a style that is all very empowering and about everybody's committed to this overall, as you say, into the vision, right? And I'm sure there's a lot of trust that's been created, a lot of mutual respect, and you've taken the time. Now you're very young. You've already shared that with us. So I think you're part of the new wave of leadership that's coming into the marketplace. And I am celebrating that and can't wait to see what you're going to do. You amazing. And there's a whole other group of people who are still old school, like some leadership back in the day, whatever the day was, like leaders were up on a pedestal, right? It was like they were untouchable. And everybody else just, they weren't even humans. And I think I mean, obviously they were humans, but they weren't vulnerable. They weren't, they were supposed to have all the answers. Like that's just how life was. And so we're seeing a huge shift in how leaders are showing up. And I think COVID, one of the blessings that came out of it, I mean, amongst all the devastation, but one of the blessings is that a lot of vulnerability, a lot of humanization of C-suite executives and top leadership who, you'd see them in their living rooms or in their home offices and in their really comfy clothes. Like it was just a different level. And I think that's opened up the thing. And then I think there's also a huge conversation that is talking about, mental health and the commitment for companies to actually do something. But I'll tell you, I think it's misguided when leaders are trying to use things like a day off as a way to remedy cultural issues that are much, much, much deep, more deeply rooted than needing a day off, because a day off is simply to collapse for most people. I will Google you. And we're also connected, I think, on LinkedIn. So I am already aware, but I didn't realize that you were as young as you are and doing all of the amazing things that you are, in fact, doing. We all fall down, but the power is standing up stronger and more experienced, 100%. Right? Like, here we are, all the mistakes and the triumphs as well, right? We continue on this path. But here's the thing: if you are currently unhappy, I know that it is possible to be in the exact same situation that you're in with nothing and be happier. And if you need help doing that, by all means, I'm going to encourage you to get my book, Take Back Your Weekend, Stress Less, Do More, Be Happier. And otherwise, it is time for me to turn off, because it's been over 45 minutes, I think we've been going. But anyway, I'm so grateful you're here. Thank you so much. If you know somebody who's unhappy in their work and you're still watching right now, please share this with them. Tag them in the comments. Let them know it's here. And I will be back tomorrow, perhaps with a very special guest. We are just trying to tee that up and confirm if she can make it or not. Stay tuned, 3:15 tomorrow. And until then, may you stress less, do more, and be happier. Bye for now.